I'm Jaina Gandhi from CFA Society of India. Today, we have a very interesting webinar amid this challenging time where entire humanity and the government across the world is battling with uh, to defeat COVID-19 crisis. COVID-19 crisis from the health crisis has turned out to be an economic crisis. And to discuss this today, we have a very interesting and relevant topic: job, work, and earning in the COVID world. To give a meaningful insight on the same, we have here with us Dr. Gayatri Vasudevan, Executive Chairperson, LaborNet, as a speaker. Dr. Gayatri Vasudevan, let me introduce Gayatri in a detail. Dr. Gayatri Vasudevan was cited as one of the top 50 women in business by Business Today, a leading magazine in India, in the year 2017, and Entrepreneur of the Year in Social Business category by Forbes India in 2018. She has a doctorate in development studies with 30 publications in the areas of labor and employment and gender issues to her credit. Gayatri was also a speaker at the ENY Entrepreneur Forum 2017 at Monte Carlo, Monaco. Between 1999 and 2007, Gayatri worked for the International Labour Organization, a United Nations agency. She co-founded LaborNet in 2006 with a vision to enable livelihood and enhance quality of life through education, employability, and entrepreneurship. LaborNet model has been widely acclaimed as one of the few companies in this space which run profitably and having a far-reaching impact. LaborNet has impacted about a million lives, empowering youth, men and women to earn a decent living or become profitable micro entrepreneurs. Over to you, Gayatri. Please take it over.
Thanks, Jen, for the introduction. I think, and thanks for the opportunity, Srinivas and the others in the CFA, for me to share some of my thoughts and experiences at this point. As Jayana said, I think these are unparalleled times. I don't think any one of us sitting in our respective homes today could have ever imagined this to happen in our lifetime. Who expected the roads to be empty? Who expected every workplace to be empty, every shop to be empty, and all people inside? So I think this has been as Jana, I'm just borrowing her words, unprecedented crisis. Now, is it a health crisis or is it an economic crisis? It's a health crisis is without doubt something that we all know. But from an economic crisis, yes, it is a major economic crisis, and we're all trying to grapple with it. So what I'm going to do now is to share with you some of the thoughts that we, probably is on all our minds, and then we can discuss it at a later point. Reverse migration. All through India has been a country where growth has happened because of migration. The last 10 years, I would go to say 20 years, migration we never thought of as migration. We always thought of it as mobility. I think all of us have grown at a time where mobility is a reality, right? You can go anywhere in the world. You can go from any state to any state, any city to another state and a city, and growth has happened because of that. So let me give you some numbers on how this plays out, right? So if you look at a 10-year period, 45 crore people or 450 million people have migrated from one place to the other. So you can see in a 10-year period between 2001 and 2011, there's a jump between 300 million to 450. Now, imagine if the census was done, we are practically in a decade. That means this number may have gone to about 550, 600 million. So many people are not in their quote unquote hometown. Now, let's take one more statistics, right? Out of this, 140 million, that means between 2001 and 2011, 140 million people have actually, the number has gone up. You see, that's the kind of number. That means that's why I added another 140 for this decade, of which 20 million are for work and business clearly. Now, if you look at external migration, that means those who we send to the Middle East, US, UK, etc., you add another 15 million there. So India is a net country which has prospered on the back of people leaving their hometowns, working in another country. So just to sort of proceed further, what do we find? We find that there is a movement that we see, inter-district, interstate, inter-country, and all of this has affected us. Now, if we look at, sorry, the slides are going up and down, but I just want to sort of spend some time on what's hit us today, right? Unemployment has gone up, and I'm not going to debate whether the number is right or wrong, but it's an evident fact that unemployment has gone up sharply. CMI is one data set. It's an often debated data set, but let's just say we go with the general feeling that the number of unemployed has gone up. Now, moving on, we find that where is all this crisis happening? Is it happening in the cities? Is it happening in the rural area? Where is it happening? Now, this is something that you and me know in a very qualitative fashion, right? Who migrates? People from UP, Bihar, Odisha, Bengal, other normal states which migrate. Who migrates out of India? Kerala, UP, you'd say is the main states. Andhra Pradesh would be. So I've just tried to look to see where do people migrate out of. That means which is a sending state. Now, this becomes relevant in the cause of our businesses when we are actually looking at it later. We find that these same states, which are sending states, and those which are receiving states will start behaving very differently suddenly. So, I just want us to take a look at what that means for us in our day to day life, right? What does that mean? Do we expect things to come back to normal if the lockdown finishes? I think every one of us will be rather naive to think it can happen. It's practically impossible, right? Lockdown finishes, you can't reach normality. In that case, we have to have a new normal. If there's a new normal, we need to know what was our old looking like. What was our old looking like? We had, as I had said, we had workforce surplus states and we had workforce deficit states. Suddenly, this whole thing is going to completely change. The states which were taking people, like Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, may suddenly become workforce deficit states. They are the places where you're not going to have people there. The moment train and bus start, everyone is going to move back to their villages, towns, because everybody wants their family safe first and foremost. Second, the city is not able to have you in, because the whole question of physical distancing is not possible. If physical distancing is not possible, then the word that we're all using today, social distancing, in my mind is actually physical distancing, right? Why is it heavy? What it is because of where will you go? Where are the poor supposed to go? How are they going to live? These are questions which are going to be there. So let me just come back and look at saying, if the workforce destination states have suddenly become deficit with workers, and states which were sending workforce have got surplus workforce, what is that going to look like for us? And I think that's really what I'd like to spend time on. Is it an opportunity? Is it a challenge? How are we going to deal with it? So if I move on to looking at that, now let's just take a few examples and move in that direction, right? What is going to happen? Now let's take practical examples. I live in a city called Bangalore. Many of you may be in Mumbai or Delhi, or for that matter, Pune, any of these cities. India has about 35 cities which have a population of more than 1 million. And in my mind, all these cities are going to be red zones. And all these cities have been the places which people have got employment in. So we need to re-look at how this is going to play out. these industries will have to go in for automation. These industries will have to look at technology. These industries will have to look at ways in which they can operate differently. Because it's not, as I said, a 3-month issue, but it's a much longer period that one is having problems with. Um, so we were just trying to play out what does that mean in real terms, right? In real terms, that's going to play out like this. You're going to now let's just again, let me take examples and just explain that point. Now suppose you were in UP, which is generally or a Odisha, which is generally a sending state. Now this sending state is going to have a lot of trained workers, experienced workers who come back, but they may not have the entire basket which is required to get back into work. What does that mean? That means they may not have information on work because they've never worked there. They've actually worked in Bangalore, Delhi, or Bombay, or any such place. So they're never going to really have the place there to work. Second, they don't therefore have networks. They don't have information cycles. They don't have the wherewithal to move also, because mobility was something they took for granted. Even if I have to go from my village to a district, mobility is going to get hit. So the first and foremost is these states need to start having ability to create work. And today the creating work for many people has been in the service sector, not the manufacturing sector. So we'll have to look at which sectors will benefit and how will it benefit there. Now the workforce, the destination states are going to completely change. Destination states, how are they going to change? What's the Bombay going to do, or a Pune going to do, Bangalore going to do in this period of time? This is where the manufacturing is. This is where the service sector jobs are. How are we even going to cope here? Now here is where we will have to look at completely different collaborative methods of working in order to move forward. So I think these are the main, if I look at patterns of change which is going to happen, right? One of the patterns of change that we're going to see is we're going to often use instead of sending and receiving states, we'll be talking of workforce surpluses, workforce deficits. Then we'll be talking of ways in which we are going to handle labor. So labor is going to become a precious commodity. Labor was a cost item in our in our thought process, but automation to replace labor will happen. Where labor cannot be replaced, there is going to be a spend on labor. So the spend on labor could come from residences. So one will have to find places in which you can house them. Their health needs is going to become very important. So that means, thermo testing, sanitization will all become very, very important for us as we go forward. So we've tried to really look at the whole challenge of the industry and see what is the way forward. Is it? I'm going back to the point here. Is it going to be a positive or is it going to be a negative? Now, if we are looking at a workforce, the sending states, as I would say, which have suddenly become workforce surplus states, they have to solve problems of information, movement, and labor market. So these labor markets have to change. That means you're not going to have people in nakas anymore, where you pick up loose, quote unquote, labor. Movement, the public transport system is going to have to match the changing times. You can't have the 50 people in a bus anymore. You're going to have probably 20 people in order for it to match. So even here, changes are going to be in the way of work, way of life, and work, which will impact the economic profitability of each of the units that we're talking. So the economics have to change in the workforce surplus locations. Now, if we move on to the workforce deficit locations, what does that mean? And I'm going to take it from the previous discussions that I had briefly touched upon is, we have to ensure that we gain worker confidence. We have to ensure retention policies are there. HR will suddenly become the most important element here, because if people are scared, people are not confident, people are thinking, if I work, I'm going to fall sick, it's not going to work. If people are thinking, I will go back, it doesn't matter if I don't have work immediate, then also it's not going to matter. So a state which is going to provide you food and universal basic income can actually impair the ability of people to work. I want to be cautious while making this statement, because universal basic income and food is probably necessary. But having said that, work is more than about earning. Work is about mental stability. Work is about keeping occupied, seeing that restlessness doesn't happen. So I think companies will sort of have to move that direction. Mobility restrictions are going to be part of our life. And the other day I was just thinking, I'm so glad that I'm hitting 50. At least I had the luxury of traveling wherever I wanted, right? Life involved that, not only for the poor, but for every one of us. Now, suddenly that is going to change. You're going to ask this question: do you belong to Bandra or Santa Cruz? Do you belong to Jayanagar or Jai Mahal? Are you belonging to Gurgaon or Noida? Can I travel, not travel? Within an area, you're going to say, do you, that's why I was using the term physical distancing rather than social distancing. My fear is that physical distance is going to cause social distance. And the moment social distances is caused in a workplace, it could cause a lot of tensions. Where do you live? Are you living in a safe environment? Do you have the habits which can cause you the safety? Otherwise, are you going to cause me infection? I think those are the conversations that we're going to have at workplaces. Now, the other element that is very, very important is the restructuring that all of us will have to do, irrespective of the type of organizations that we're going to work in, right? Um, the best of organizations, one would have thought everybody who's in delivery would have, raked the moolah at this point of time. But they've had labor shortages. You've had Hari Menon come on and say that, you know what, we struggled, but we coped, but we still couldn't service everybody. There's a huge demand. Another statistics that I want to quote is that, again, I'm quoting Big Basket. They were apparently stocking 25,000 items at one point of time. Post COVID or in this COVID lockdown period, they're stocking 22,500 items. So just look at the supply chain backwards, right? What's going to be manufactured is going to change. What items are going to come is going to change. So the world in the way that we knew it is going to change, and therefore, again, operational restructuring is going to be a key word. We're going to again and again say it in our mind, say it every conversation, and say, the economics has to change according to my labor policies and my business continuity plans. I think these are terminologies which are going to be everyday, dining table conversations practically for every single person. And how, again, if we were to just spend again a minute, we've tried to just put down, how do you build a person's confidence? And here, when I'm meaning worker, I'm not talking only of the informal sector worker or somebody who's working with you in your factory. It is each one of us as a worker is going to want these things, because we're going to be scared of our own health. Whether you're poor, you're rich, it's classless. You're going to have these kinds of issues that you want to have. Companies, as I said, may actually really look at how incentives are going to be given. So your wage bill may change in a very different manner. Those of us who can work from home will become the norm. I was reading just the last week. At least there are 3 to 4 news items which says that companies are going to have 50%, 75% of their workforces who can work from home. They're going to say that we're not going to really have everybody working from one place. So there's going to be retention and rebuilding is also a matter of reimagining. So reimagining our workplace is going to be the reality of where we are going on. Again, if we were to look at mobility, what does that mean for a company? Uh, I know a lot of people today out of desperation have done it, right? Many people, the other day I was talking to a young girl who has a kharkhana in Pune. I forget her name, but she had a very interesting point to make. She said, "See, I have 50 workers who are all." She had like a fashion boutique. Now these people are all migrant. They are staying there and they couldn't go back. So she's given them wage, food, accommodation during lockdown period. Her question really was, "What do I do post lockdown? Do I continue? If lockdown continues and if I don't have business, am I supposed to continue to give it?" The answer is probably, as your business grows, this is probably a reality. If you want any interstate migrant or interdistrict migrant, you're not going to be able to afford it. If you don't have food and stay, you're going to worry on health. So your one is going to take a cost benefit analysis on transport, food and stay, and build it into our business models, saying this is most important for us to happen. And especially because no one, and I think including go. So the discovery phase is also a phase where one can be most creative and most innovative. So I believe that this could possibly be an opportunity for us to change the way in which we looked at uh, uh, certain cost items as well as certain labor practices. Now, if you take the last point of restructuring, uh, we all saw in the newspaper, right? Big Basket tied up with Uber. I mean, we never thought such a thing can happen. Similarly, smaller firms, smaller. Just today, I was listening to a conversation where they said ASSOCHAM is looking to say ways in which whoever is stuck, whichever worker is stuck in which location, can some other company use. That means that I could actually never have employed this worker, but because I have this database and I know this worker is skilled and stuck, can I use? So people are thinking of new methods of collaboration, new methods of hiring and worker practices. I think these are some things that one needs to embrace and move forward. And upskilling and reskilling is a no-brainer. I think that's true of everyone, every one of us. For example, I can say in my own case, I have never been technology savvy, but now everything I have to do myself, right? Uh, and you learn. So you what you didn't want to do, you pick up over time. And I think that's going to happen more so in the case of the um, your blue collar workforce, where they have to learn to live as well as work differently. It's not only work. So working and living are going to be two inter related items which are going to be there, inextricably interlinked. Now if we sort of move to really moving on to the next point, there we'll find that you know sometimes I'm tired of thinking of it as an economic crisis. Of course, it's an economic crisis, right? But we can't live in a crisis permanently. You cannot go calamity to calamity, crisis to crisis. A human mind needs to move forward and think, what can I do to ensure that the calamity and the crisis is converted to an opportunity? And I think the whole tenet and the discussion that we had and the point of view that I was attempting to put forward to all of you was that we this is possibly the wake up call we had to ensure that there's an even distribution of workforce. That means from your surplus states, people are going back. Therefore, that place is going to have more skilled workers. You're going to have the range of workers there. The deficit states are going to start hoping people locally may have to work. Automation may be coming in a big way. Worker income across board may go up, and this may go up, as I said, in multiple ways. It could go up from their work, their living ways. We've heard that Dharavi is not a viable unit anymore, right? If you share toilets, you could have problems. So your entire social living, everything is probably going to change. Technology, the last 20 years has been amazing, right? It's transformed the way in which we live and work. But now that technology is going to have to lead more than earlier. We thought it was a multiplier effort. Now it needs to be like a satellite. It's like launching. It needs to launch us into a different era and time that is there. And of course, I've said this multiple times, but workplace practices and systems have to change. Otherwise, all of us are in danger. And that's something we'll have to nurture like a baby and grow it. The very fact that we don't know how to do it is where we'll have to be innovative and also accommodate. Um, uh, and last of all is organizations have to become efficient in a cash-strapped environment, in a revenue uncertain environment. There's no choice. So efficiency will energize us to actually need for efficiency will energize us to look at labor differently, look at our work styles differently, look at practices differently. And last of all, marriages we never thought could happen. A big basket with an Uber, an MSME lending to another MSME, touchless hiring, staffing of scale. All of these will be what will change as we move forward. Let me just stop here and maybe we could have a discussion around what your questions are, or anything you'd like to share. I think that'd be interesting. Jaina, I'll hand it over to you to start with.
Yeah, sure. So, Gayatri, thanks for the wonderful presentation. And we are getting a lot of questions here. As we think this for the economic growth to happen, land, labor, and capital are the major resources. And out of that, now we are talking about the labor. And and labor, as you mentioned in your presentation, is a precious commodity. Now, we have a question here from one of our member that, going back up to the century ago, this is not a crisis which has happened the first time in the human history. In the going back uh, uh, going back 200 years ago, when we all have learned in our history about the Spanish influenza, which ultimately led to Great Depression. So when you can you make some comparison of this crisis with what happened 100 years ago? Any historical perspective can be related?
See, I think every crisis which has come has changed the way in which businesses and economies function. 25% of Europe's population was wiped out at that point of time. Which is a significant loss of life and way of working. And there have been WhatsApp messages, and I'm no historian, but I'm just telling you what I've been seeing of people. The dress codes were with masks. People had covered their faces, and that was the style statement of that day. So right from your attire to the way automation and mechanization came at that time changed the way that work happened. So I mean, just to sort of, I haven't thought about it, but given that this is the question, I'm just thinking aloud. Possibly the first way in which UN was done was also around that period, right? Suddenly worker rights were spoken about. I think we're again at that point when, another historical point which is interesting is when the vehicles came, they said, what would happen to horses? Said, what happens to everybody who has a horse cart? The person who is the rider, who takes your carriage, all unemployment, how will it work? These were questions which were there in the early 1900s. But more jobs with mobility happened. When cotton from handloom was replaced with power looms, Europe was faced with this major question as to what will happen to workers. Is it going to result in large scale unemployment, and is everybody going to absolutely be without income and earning? But look at the other side of the story, right? People started wearing clothes. Clothing became a necessity from a luxury. So everybody, and it resulted in income again. So my belief is that in a few years, we will have businesses and ways of coping, just like the influencer pushed us towards, and the Great Depression pushed us towards, like uh, 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 and now what the Corona crisis is pushing us towards.
Okay. Okay. So another interesting question, which is coming from the member, is like to a very specific question on the women. So, like among the migrant population, there are women also, like migrant workers. So, I mean, compared to, like we have seen in the history, the women have been like that any crisis or any adversity, women suffer the most. So, in your experience, like in this reverse migration, what will be the position of women migrant workers?
So I think we should first look at the other. Men have been outside. Male migration has been the big dominant number, single male migration. Now these men are also going to go back. So women will possibly lose their freedom. So if I have my husband come back and stay continuously, then that woman who had freedom in Odisha or Bihar for 7 months or 8 months is suddenly going to have a husband there. So it's probably going to have complexity like that. Women migrants itself has not been a significant number in India, right? It is fundamentally the northeastern, Jharkhand, Kerala, which have been leading in women migration. Kerala in terms of the healthcare sector, Northeast in terms of the hospitality sector and beauty wellness sector, Jharkhand in the domestic work sector, Bengal, Jharkhand in the domestic work sector. Now, and then you have the whole BPO, that is your telecallers, customer call. All of these places have had women come in as important sectors of the work, and sadly, all will be hit. The hospitality, of course, is facing the biggest crisis that one can know. Beauty wellness, I'm not sure how easily it will bounce back. The whole BPO telecalling, I think, will have to go a 360-degree change. Is not possible to be in the same manner. India may lose business also. Confidential financial data may move back to outsource the environments. US, America, Australia will take it back. So women are going to have women migrant workers themselves, in my mind, is going to be very badly hit because of the sectors they belong in. The sectors are hit, and therefore they're going to be hit. Male reverse migration is going to have an impact on women back home, who are one way or the other managing their lives without their men. That also is going to cause its own complexities. And I'd like to sort of bring in my own personal example. I and my husband lived apart for almost 17 years of our 25 years of married life. The first time we started living together, after the first 17 years, both of us had difficulties. We were not used to living together. Simple things. I'm used to my own work style. It was okay to meet once a quarter for a few days. Everybody is in a holiday mood. But everyday living is a different issue. So I do believe that there'll be a lot of family adjustments, particularly at the poor level, which is going to happen a lot.
So, like can you relate, like the how is the crime situation going to be, like poverty situation, crime situation going forward?
I am I'm not sure. I think work is very important. I think the sooner everybody is employed and is fully occupied, it's the best. The only way to reduce crime in my way is to be productively engaged. Today, students are not engaged, and the digital divide there is very clear, right? I mean, if it is one of our children, they can do online, but no government school is online yet. So you're already creating a divide there. Colleges, the upmarket colleges will probably be moving digitally faster. The poorer colleges will not. Amongst the informal sector workers, they're all going to go back, and there's an information asymmetry, so they may not know even where to look for work. So the I think it's contingent on us, just like we did a lockdown, to lock down our brain and think how are we going to ensure everyone is economically occupied. I think that's the ask for us.
Okay, in your presentation, we discussed 2 points. One is a labor deficit state and labor surplus state. So, in case of a labor deficit state, do you expect a lot of wage inflation? If yes, then how long, you think it will persist? And what would be the role of labor union going forward here? And what will be? And also, this question is a pretty long question. So how do you see the trend toward contractor hiring changes? The contractor hiring, workers hiring will pan out. Uh,
So I think wage bill will go up. And that could be that's a reality. As I said, the fact that you will have to do mandatory health tests, the fact that your shop floor, whether it's manufacturing or services, cannot have more than a certain number at a point of time, will increase your wage bill. Particularly, it's true of the manufacturing. Office spaces will probably come down, and therefore parts of the wages which are related to those will come down from work from home kind of tenets. So you may have that playing to an advantage. How long is a $1 million question? I see this at least for a 2 year period playing out. This kind of devastation, and this will be a bit industry specific. Like, for example, a hospitality industries will be the last to recover. Travel industries will probably be the last to recover. Whereas certain other industries may have a one to two, one, not one, maybe 2 quarter to 3 quarter impact on it. Um, so we'll just have to play out and see what industries are going to look like, and then work backwards on how their wage bills are going to look like. As far as contracting, in my mind, contracting will go up actually, because every industry will probably see a need for staffing companies. So just in that context, again, I'm going to go to a personal example. So one of LaborNet runs a staffing company, and we've suddenly found an increase in the number of delivery boys, pickers, packers, as well as all the blue collar roles which are coming up, which originally companies wouldn't always have it, right? They'd have it as gig, they'd have it as various other mechanisms. I think this will go up for safety's case. The last, that is on labor unions, mixed feeling here, because if worker care for worker goes up as such, unionization may not happen so much, but it would be because one is more worried on your worker welfare. Worker welfare will come as key rather than just unionization, is my take.
Now, if you talk about, you said the reverse migration has happened, and the deficit is going to be, what I can understand, and one of the questions has come from member also, like this reverse migration, how will it impact the metro cities like Mumbai and Kolkata or any other metro city where MSME work is going on? So, what will be the impact on those SMEs and MSMEs?
It's going to have a big impact. It will have a major impact there. And see, this is one of the things I've been thinking about over the last month. And I'll give you some statistics to sort of help us deconstruct this, right? India has about 35 cities which are over 1 million population. So Mumbai or a Delhi would move into the 20 million population practically, right? You're not even talking of 1 million. But India has 7,000 census towns. So, and India has 2.5 lakh villages which have population less than 5,000. That means your villages which are less than 5,000 are economically unviable. From here, people migrated to your Mumbai or a Delhi which have 15, 20 million populations. or to a Kanpur or a Jabalpur, which had probably 1 million and above, or an Ahmedabad, which has probably in the mid 4 or 5 million population, right? So now what is going to happen is, what should happen is, MSMEs will probably have to look at the nearest in that 7,000 towns and reposition and repurpose themselves fast. Because in a city, neither mobility is going to be a no-go. You're not going to have the more we stay back in the current mechanism, it isn't going to happen. So we'll have to retransform our lives. So Mumbai may get decongested from a human perspective, but from a business perspective, you may actually have to, wage bill may go down in one of these 7,000 cities because it's closer to home. Your capital cost to set up there may be higher than the first. So we'll have to look at that whole play. And that's what I meant by being creative and imaginative.
So again, there is a very interesting question from one of the member on Mumbai, city like Mumbai and Bangalore. So here the cities are densely populated and people work in a cramped offices. Now with physical distancing becoming a norm and awareness is increasing about this. So how would the companies react when it comes to their office spaces, especially here, like?
Everybody will give up office spaces. As I was telling you, just let's look at last 4 days newspaper, right? What we've read. We've read that what do you call, Big Basket has given up its spaces. A lot of people will say, why should I why should I actually have office space now? I'm not going to, at best you'll be functioning at I don't want to name the company, but a large company has said, in the next year I only want 10% of the people coming into office. Sorry, in the next month, and in the year it is 25%, which means 75% population they don't want. That's why I said the whole BPO, the entire accounts, lot of the roles which were office based roles will change. So in my mind, that will be the biggest hit.
So you mean to say the back offices kind of work will start like, from work from home, like IT industries and...
Well, where it can, where it can't, we'll lose the business. Where it can, it will.
Okay. So another very interesting question which is coming up is, what kind of industries are expected to move in the workforce surplus location? Like from...
See, I think this is also, if we are going to capture an opportunity, work surplus areas should actually have the MSMEs. Now there is a lot of problem, I understand it, both from ensuring, if you look at MSME in manufacturing particularly, let's take each sector, okay? Manufacturing as an MSME requires electricity, infrastructure and logistics. This will have to be quickly built up in various industrial estates, and we'll have to declusterize. And what kind of manufacturing will be there? Possibly the first and foremost is going to be anything related to health. So your masks, ventilators, PPEs will all be majorly in demand. The second is going to be anything which is related to personal care. So the whole sanitization industry is going to be it's every decade sees a revolution. This is going to be the healthcare infrastructure revolution. So that means your bikes will have to be sanitized, your cars will have to be sanitized, your trucks will have to be sanitized. So anything which is producing the chemicals and the any of the sanitization related goods will go up. In the service sector, as I said, sanitization, more sanitization, more sanitization, and anything which is in care roles will see huge demand. Delivery will see huge demand. It's going to be about reimagining every job role and livelihood that we had. So I can only, I'm repeating myself, but reimagining livelihoods is going to be our new mantra.
And one more interesting question which is coming. It is there in the news that TCS says that 75% of 3.5 lakh employees will work from home even post coronavirus. Do you think it is going to be a new normal?
Yes. In a
And
single answer, yes, absolutely.
yeah,
And that's what I was saying with my previous question also. I think this is the reality.
okay. And how long it is going to take home and work integration? How faster will it happen? Are we already ready or mentally everybody is on the same page?
See, working from home is also is liberating as well as very constricting, right? Uh, uh, but that's the new normal. It's going to take change. It's going to take adjustment. But one will have to do it. But it is going to be the new normal. Certain countries had it better. India never had it at all. We'll probably become like that. More collaborative tools will become used. Microsoft, your Zoom. Look at us. We're talking over Zoom now. Would this have happened a month back? So offices will change like that.
So, one more question has come on the job front, wherein the member is wishing to seek the answer from you. On that, you said human resources are probably the most precious resources at the moment, and companies will have to work hard to retain forces. However, it is common knowledge that most companies are laying off their staff. Given the uncertain circumstances, what is your suggestion for youth who are either planning to change their job or stuck in the job were not yet open to working from home and are still forcing the employees to come to work? Do you suggest that they have in favor of their they leave in favor of their mental health or hold on their job due to the risk of not finding another job? So this is on the urban job front. I mean, at one side, the labor is becoming or a worker is becoming a precious commodity, and another side, there are instances which is coming where the employees have been laid off. So, what is this contradictory situation? How is it going to resolve?
See, there will be layoffs. I don't think one can prevent it. This kind of economic loss is difficult. Where what I meant is, as soon as business starts coming up, how fast can businesses come on its feet is going to be about how they're going to work with their labor. That's what I meant. Um, you know, I was in the morning just talking with a very big builder, developer, and he was actually saying that a huge Bombay developer actually who was saying that they have kept a certain amount of labor with them because they want the day's work is allowed. They want to start. So there are going to be places where there you will retain in order for you to be able to come back. But the more important is new labor that you do will be treated very differently. As far as the youth are concerned, if you have a job, hold on to the job for dear life, right? And work very hard at it because this is a period of a depression of a nature that we haven't even thought about. So I don't even think any youth should experiment with leaving a job at this point. Satisfied or not satisfied, hang on for dear life.
Uh, So another, now moving on to the macro front, you think that this reverse migration will have in the last slide you said some positive impact about the reverse migration. So how much can you is it quantifiable to have an impact on India's GDP?
I wouldn't go. I mean, the India's GDP, they're saying the growth rate is between 0 and 1.9. 1.9 is the best we've seen, and 0 is the worst. So, given that, um, I don't think, as an economy, I don't think we're going to perform well this year. That's a given. I'm saying individual businesses can, however, look at recovery. So I think, given India is such a large MSME country, it is the individual businesses which will either make or break our country. Individual businesses are not going to move to those 7,000 census towns. Individual businesses want to remain in big cities, are able to make the investments to move it. are going to be very negative. So the agility of our individual businesses, our financial fiscal prudence at a macro level will have to be married. And we all know the banking crisis that we're having, right? NBFCs are unable to lend, banks are nervous because the balance sheets and the P&Ls are not looking good. Future projections are uncertain. So at a time like this, liquidity is going to be problematic. But injecting liquidity at individual business level as well as at macro level is going to be important.
Okay, so one more question, which is like coming up an interesting question. Like a member wants to know your view on the industries, like three industries according to you, which will be positively impacted because of this crisis, the reverse migration, and three industries which will be negatively impacted.
So three industries which will be positively impacted, let me take. First is the whole, technology-led delivery business. Anything which is in the logistics delivery will do well. Anything which is in the health infrastructure or manufacturing will do well. Anything which is able to look at reverse procurement related will do well. So these three I think will definitely do well as businesses. Three which will be very difficult for it to come up in my mind is um, traditional manufacturing. Traditional manufacturing will go down because they're all, as you rightly said, completely situated in a few cities and a few states. Those will have to change drastically. Hospitality, retail, education as a business will change. Education may have to transform itself completely. So these are the three which I think will be impacted negatively: education, hospitality, and education in the conventional sense. Education, schools, colleges in the conventional sense will be hit. Hospitality, of course, we all know is going to be very deeply impacted. Travel tourism will be deeply impacted. MSMEs, which are in the conglomerates, will be urban conglomerates, will be very deeply impacted.
Okay. So also question on like interesting question on the environment, as the physical distancing or social distancing is going to become a norm for an extended period of time, at least as you mentioned for 2 years. So will it lead to any positive impact on our environment?
I think so. I mean, we are seeing flowers, we are seeing flamingos in Navi Mumbai. Parrots are coming up. So are they saying that the Ganga is the cleanest at this point of time? But I'm no expert to talk about it. But as a common, as a person who lives in the country, I think pollution levels have gone down. Environment possibly benefited from the lockdown best, with physical distancing becoming the new normal and the new reality of a post lockdown world. It's probably environment will possibly gain. But on the other hand, if 7,000 towns grow, let's hope we don't make the same mistakes and grow it just like we did our Mumbai's and Bangalore's and Delhi's. Let's hope we don't make that same mistake so that we have a better balance.
So one more thing, like see, now the emphasis will be on the workers' health safety, increased cost of social distancing. The companies will be required to provide the food, arrange for the transportation, so which will ultimately will increase the cost of labor or cost of production as a whole for the company. And will this increase cost will lead to inflationary scenario? That is one question. Second question coming up is, will it like the companies will be able to pass on this increased impact to the consumer? And third, will the government provide any fiscal help here in terms of some tax holidays or for like till the time the virus is totally eradicated, something like that?
I'm actually not equipped to answer the question, but I'll just tell you my views as a common person. On the third, I think everybody's been waiting for a tax fiscal package from the government, and I think they're also trying. Possibly every day we're waiting to see what kind of package is going to come. Uh, but I don't think they also know the resources that they have and what's a commitment, and therefore no fiscal package has come. So let's assume sooner or later government may have to announce a fiscal package. There's a lot of clamor for a fiscal package, tax holidays, financial incentivizing, GST changes have all been asked for, and I think your community is better equipped to answer it than I am. On the second, will it result in production cost going up, and will consumer pick it up? I think uh, possibly companies will have to rethink their production costs. As I said, they may have to do an upfront investment on, many of them may go in for an upfront investment to automate, and therefore see that there is less labor dependency that is there. That could happen. The labor that they have, they may pay more and treat better, but automation will be a fact. Will consumers pick it up? I don't think companies will have an option but to pass it on to consumers. So that I think is a reality. But to be honest, I'm not equipped to answer this question. I'm just telling you what I feel as a person.
Okay. So now, again, like, we've been talking about the work from home. So there's one more question which is coming up from our member on the work from home. So, so the question is like, work from home cannot be a perfect solution. As we see, there is always a risk of data breach. Do you think India is ready with such infrastructure where we can maintain data privacy? And if not, how should we tackle this in the our work environment till the time the work environment is properly developed, as there will be a travel restriction and risk of second breakout as we do not have the vaccine ready. Like, how will we tackle this data breach security till the time the travel restriction is there?
I think already companies are moving work back. So there is going to be more and more deglobalization which is going to happen. This is the industry which will be strongly that this industry is going to be hit. America will ensure that its back office is within America. UK will ensure that. Europe will ensure. Australia will ensure. That industry is going to be hit very badly, according to me.
Yeah. So,
And the companies will have to quickly. The technology companies will have to rethink their models and ensure data privacy they can assure. Otherwise, this will lose.
okay. So one more very relevant question, like deglobalization is happening and countries will go back to their own country and do the manufacturing and the other back office and all such work. So will it lead to like the NRIs returning back to India and adding, like, already we have a job crisis and adding further fuel to it?
Okay, let me just again go back to statistics, right? If you looked at my first slide, we had 2 lakh Indians who are outside. Now, a large majority is Kerala. Kerala is already preparing for a majority of its migrants coming back. So the answer to that would be a categoric yes. The newspaper articles on the US president's statements on H1B green cards have all been worrying at best. So I think the answer is they are going to come back. But what I'm also seeing is that it is going to also be a split. Does Mumbai want workers from Bihar or UP? Does Karnataka want workers from Assam or Odisha? Are we willing to pay the price for it? I think these are questions which are going to be there. We behave very much like independent countries. So and I believe mobility is the biggest loss which is going to happen here. It's going to affect our work life. It's going to affect work tremendously. The lack of mobility and the loss of mobility will be a game changer.
Okay, so like there's been like one more question which is coming on a India level. And most of the foreign countries, like, because of the emotional reason and the economic reason, now want to shift back their industry from China to another country. So will Japan has already taken a step, call back the company back to their country. So will like any of industry, if they are like going out of China, so will it India will be a beneficiary?
It depends on how we actually operate, right? As I was saying, if we actually use this as an opportunity and build up our 7,000 census towns, the answer is yes. But do we have the wherewithal to do it? I'm not very sure. So the good news is we'll probably have skilled manpower going back, but we need to pull in one direction. Like we could do a 40-day lockdown. Do we have a way in which we are going to say, you know what, these 7,000 towns without doubt will build up, and I'll take that business. So it requires a macro as well as an MSME together to plan very. Ability to plan and execute at a mass scale is needed. Otherwise, we will not be the beneficiaries of it.
So, Gayatri, thanks for giving us a wonderful insight and a very, really a deep insight, which is like increase our understanding about this labor and reverse migration. So, thank you very much for that. And in the interest of time, now we will end this webinar here. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me.
We can all leave the meeting.